The battlefield was full of smoke and fire. Explosions echoed in the sky. Gunshots crackled through the dust-covered hills. It was war, loud and brutal. Among the chaos ran a young alien girl named Nira. She was small, just 16 years old, with glowing silver skin and wide blue eyes. She wore a torn medical sash across her chest, showing she was not a soldier. But war didn't care who was a fighter and who wasn't. Nira was searching for her little brother. They had been separated during the last attack. Her legs moved fast, heart pounding in fear. She kept shouting his name, but the noise of war drowned her voice. The ground shook beneath her feet. The air smelled like smoke, metal, and death. Then it happened. A loud click under her right foot. She froze. She looked down and saw a strange round device hidden beneath the dirt. Her eyes widened. It was a landmine. Boom. The explosion was loud and sharp. It lifted her into the air, and she landed hard on the ground. Pain hit her like lightning, sharp and burning, she screamed, a sound full of fear and agony. Her leg was gone, torn off below the knee. Blood poured from the wound. She tried to move, but couldn't. The sky spun above her. The sounds around her became distant and strange. She saw her people running away. None of them stopped. They thought she was dead or worse. Too much trouble to save. Nira cried out, "Help me." But there was no answer. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. She didn't want to die like this. Alone in the dirt, in the middle of war, as darkness pulled her deeper, she heard footsteps. Soft at first, then closer. She turned her head and saw something strange. It was a human soldier helmet. Off, weapon down, hands open. He knelt beside her, looking at her face. He was young, maybe 20, with short brown hair and tired eyes. He looked surprised to see she was still alive. But he didn't shoot, didn't shout. He whispered, "Stay with me." Nira tried to speak, but no sound came out. She was weak, fading, scared. The soldier opened his med pack and worked quickly. He pulled out tools and wrapped a bandage tight around her leg. He pressed a patch to her chest to help her breathe. All the while, he kept talking in a soft voice. "You're okay now," he said. "I've got you." Nira didn't understand all his words, but the tone was gentle, kind. She could feel that he wasn't here to hurt her. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She cried out in pain, but he didn't stop. Carrying her through the smoke, he moved fast. Other human soldiers saw him. They shouted, "Why are you helping an alien?" He didn't answer. He just kept moving. They reached a small camp behind the front lines. A medic tent stood in the corner, buzzing with light. He kicked the door open and placed Nira on the only free bed. "She's critical," he shouted. "She needs surgery now." Other medics hesitated. They had never treated an alien before. Her skin, her organs, her blood, everything was different. They looked at the soldier. Confused, unsure, he looked back and said, "Then let me do it." The room was silent for a second. Then someone handed him gloves and tools. The young soldier, his name was Jason, got to work. He cleaned the wound, stopped the bleeding, and sealed the leg. He worked for hours, sweat dripping from his face. Outside, the war kept going. But in this room, there was only one battle: the fight to keep her alive. Finally, her pulse became steady. Her breathing calmed. She was alive. Jason sat beside her, tired but calm. He looked at her and said, "You're safe now." Nira opened her eyes for a moment. She saw his face. She didn't know his name. Didn't know why he helped her, but in that moment, she whispered one word: "Why?" Jason gave a small smile. "Because pain is pain," he said, "no matter who you are." And then Nira slept, safe, for the first time in a long, long time. The sun rose slowly over the battlefield. The smoke had started to clear, but the pain still hung in the air inside the small medical tent. Jason sat beside the alien girl. Her name was Nira. She lay on the bed, her eyes closed, her chest rising and falling. Her skin was pale, her breathing weak. She had survived the night. But the fight for her life was far from over. Jason hadn't slept. He kept checking her pulse, her temperature, her bandages. He knew she had lost too much blood. He also knew that if she didn't get a synthetic leg soon, she wouldn't walk again, maybe not even live. A human officer walked into the tent. He looked at Nira and frowned. "You saved an alien," the officer said. "Why?" Jason didn't answer right away. He stood up and faced the man. "She was crying," he said. "She was bleeding, alone, scared, so." The officer replied, "She's not one of us." Jason took a deep breath. "She's not our enemy either." He said, "She's just a girl." The officer shook his head. "We're not a hospital for aliens," he said. "She's your problem." Now, then he left. Jason stared at the tent flap for a moment. Then he looked back at Nira. She needed more than bandages now. She needed a new leg. And no one else was going to help her. Jason went to the back of the tent where the storage units were kept. He opened a crate labeled Cyberlimb Units, Emergency Use Only. Inside were several synthetic legs, sleek and silver, but they were all made for humans. Nira's anatomy was different. Her muscles, her nerves, even her bone shape. It wouldn't fit without changes. He picked up one of the synthetic legs and brought it to the workbench. He studied it carefully. He had some training in biomechanical engineering, just enough to make adjustments. He grabbed his tools, took off the outer layer, and began to work. Hours passed. He removed sensors, added flexible connectors, changed the shape of the foot. He checked her nerve patterns with a scanner and recoded the neural link. Other medics walked by and stared. Some laughed. "You building a toy for your pet alien?" One said. Jason ignored them. He focused on the leg. Focused on the girl who was still alive because of him. Later that day, Nira opened her eyes. She was weak, but awake. She turned her head slowly and saw Jason working. She didn't speak, just watched him. His hands were careful, steady. His face serious and focused. She remembered the pain, the landmine, the fire, the darkness, and then she remembered his face. The first face she saw after the explosion. Not filled with hate, but with concern. She tried to speak, but her voice was too dry. Jason noticed. Rushed to her side, he held a cup of water and helped her drink. "You're awake," he said softly. "That's good." Nira blinked slowly. "Where am I?" She whispered. "You're in a human camp." Jason replied, "Safe, for now." She looked down at the place where her leg used to be. It was bandaged and clean, but still gone. She looked away, her eyes filling with tears. Jason sat beside her. "I'm making you a new leg," he said. "A synthetic one." Nira shook her head. "No one will help me," she said. "Not even my people." Jason placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm not your people," he said, "but I'm still going to help." Later that night, Jason walked back into the tent carrying the modified synthetic leg. He held it up proudly. "I think this will work," he said. He sat beside her and explained how it worked. He showed her the sensors, the connectors, the way the leg would move. Nira listened, confused but curious. She had never seen such technology before. Her own people didn't use this kind of tech. Jason smiled. "It will take time," he said. "It won't be easy, but I'll help you walk again." Nira looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Jason felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just saving a life anymore, a key. He was saving something bigger, hope, in a war full of hate. This small act of kindness was like light in the dark, and maybe, just maybe, it would be the start of something greater. The morning sun brought no peace. The war was still going, far beyond the camp walls. But inside the small medic tent, something rare was happening. Hope. Jason stood at his workbench, tightening screws on the modified synthetic leg, the metal shone under the lamp's soft light. This wasn't just a machine. To him, it was a promise. Nira lay quietly on her cot, watching him. Her body was weak, but her eyes were full of questions. She didn't understand why this human was helping her. Back on her planet, they were told humans were monsters, but Jason didn't act like a monster. He brought her water, talked to her in calm words, and worked all night to make her walk again. She wanted to ask more questions, but her mouth still hurt when she spoke. Instead, she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" Jason didn't stop working. "I've seen too many people die," he said. "If I can save even one, maybe it means something." The leg was nearly ready, but there was one big problem left. The humanized neural interface wouldn't fully connect with Nira's alien nerves. Jason had tried twice already the moment he plugged it in. The system gave errors, wrong patterns, mismatched signals, failed connections. He opened a scanner and ran a scan over Nira's leg stump. Her nerves glowed green on the screen. Jason sighed and rubbed his eyes. He needed help, technical help. He thought for a moment, then walked out of the tent, leaving Nira resting. A few minutes later, he entered the engineer's bay. Inside were two tech officers working on drone repairs. "Hey, Corporal Hale," one of them said. "Back to play doctor." Jason ignored the joke and placed the leg on the table. "I need help adjusting the interface," he said. "Her nervous system isn't human." The engineers looked at each other, then at the leg. One of them raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" he said. Jason nodded. "She deserves a chance." The engineers hesitated, then slowly stood up. "Let's see what we can do." For the next 4 hours, they worked side by side. They rewrote code lines, tested pulse signals, and adjusted voltage settings. It was hard, messy work, but finally, a green light blinked on the screen. The neural interface sensed partially, but enough to begin. Jason thanked them and carried the leg back to the medical tent. Nira sat up a little when she saw him return. He gave her a small smile. "It's ready," he said. "It won't feel normal at first, but it will work." She looked scared. "Will it hurt?" she asked. "A little," Jason said gently, "but I'll be with you the whole time." He sat on a stool next to her and began the process. First, he cleaned the area around the stump. Then he attached a soft gel pad that would connect nerves to the interface. Nira flinched, but didn't cry. Jason connected the leg slowly, carefully, until he heard the final click. The system beeped and lit up. The synthetic leg powered on. Nira gasped. She could feel something, not pain, just a strange pressure. Like something was alive, but not real. Jason smiled. "That's good," he said. "Now try moving your toes." She looked at him, confused. "I don't have toes," she said. "Try anyway," he said with a wink. She closed her eyes and focused. Her body tensed. Suddenly, the mechanical toes twitched. Jason clapped his hands once. "There we go," he said. "You just took your first step." Nira looked down at the leg, amazed. "It moved," she whispered. "It actually moved." Over the next few hours, Jason helped her sit up and adjust to the weight. The synthetic leg was heavier than a real one, but well balanced. He supported her as she tried to stand. Her body trembled, her arms shook, but she stood, if only for a second, before falling. Back onto the bed, she groaned, frustrated. "I can't do it," she said. "Yes, you can." Jason said, "This is just day one." That night, Nira didn't sleep much. She kept looking at the leg, testing small movements. It still felt strange, but it was hers now. A part of her, not a gift, a sign of survival. Jason sat in a chair beside her, half asleep. He had done more than save a life. He had given her a future, But outside the camp, not everyone was happy about it. On both sides of the war, whispers had begun. Rumors of a human mimetic who healed the enemy, of an alien girl who now walked with synthetic human tech, and somewhere out in the dark, someone was watching, waiting, because peace was dangerous to those who profited from war. Days passed. The sky above the camp turned from gray to blue, but war still echoed in the far distance inside the medical tent. Nira was learning something harder than walking. She was learning how to survive in a place where she wasn't welcome every morning. Jason helped her stand. He gave her a crutch and guided her movements. Step by step, she tried, fell, and tried again. Her synthetic leg clicked and hissed with each movement. Sometimes it locked up, sometimes it twitched. But she didn't give up. Jason was proud of her. She was strong, focused, and brave. He smiled when she took 3 steps without falling. She smiled back, small but real, but not everyone smiled. Outside the tent, other soldiers stared. Some stopped talking when she walked by. Others whispered cruel things. Why is that thing still here? She's not one of us. She could be spying. One soldier, a tall man named Pierce, looked at her with cold eyes every time. He didn't hide his hate. Jason noticed, but stayed calm. He knew that fear often looked like anger, but fear could still be dangerous. One afternoon, Nira went to the meal tent with Jason. It was her first time out in the open. She held her food tray with shaking hands. Voices fell silent as she walked in. Dozens of human soldiers stared at her. Some with curiosity, others with disgust. Jason sat beside her, trying to act normal. "She's with me," he said, loud enough for all to hear. But no one came to sit with them. Nira picked at her food, barely eating. Jason whispered, "Ignore them." She looked up. "They hate me," she said. "They don't know you." Jason replied, "That's different." Later that evening, someone painted words on her tent. "Alien trash," it said, in thick red paint. Nira stood in front of it, frozen, her hands clenched, her shoulders tight. Jason rushed over and saw the message. He cursed under his breath and wiped the paint off with his jacket. "I'm sorry," he said. "Some people are afraid of what they don't understand." Nira didn't cry, but her eyes were full of silent fire. "Let them watch," she whispered. "I will still walk the next day." She trained harder. She walked farther, tried to run. She fell more often, but she stood up every time. Jason taught her to balance, to adjust the speed settings, to trust the synthetic leg, sometimes. They laughed when she wobbled too fast and crashed into the mattress. Other times, they shared quiet stories. Nira told him about her home tall white trees, soft glowing skies, and peaceful rivers. Jason told her about earth-blue oceans, noisy cities, and childhood games. They came from different worlds, but their pain was the same. They both lost family, both lived in war, both wanted peace. Soon, the whispers in camp began to change. Some soldiers noticed how strong she was becoming. Others saw her train every morning without fail. One young medic even asked Jason, "How did you get her to heal so fast?" "She wanted to heal," Jason replied. "I just gave her the tools." But then, something changed. That night, a private message came in on Jason's tablet from command. It said, "Cease contact with non-human subject. Return her to neutral ground or risk disciplinary action." Jason stared at the message for a long time. He knew what it meant: politics, fear, control. They didn't care that she was healing. They only cared about rules. He walked to her tent. She was resting, reading. An old earth book he gave her. He sat down and said, "They want me to stop helping you." She looked at him, confused. "Why?" She asked. "Because you're not human," he replied softly. "And some people can't accept that we're the same where it matters." Nira looked away, then back at him. "I won't run," she said. "If they want to send me away, they'll have to drag me." Jason smiled, tired but proud. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said. That night, a message spread quietly across the camp. The alien girl was walking again. The human medic had done the impossible. And while some still called it wrong, others began to wonder, what if this was the first step toward peace? But far away, deep in the shadows of a broken city, an old enemy heard the news. An alien commander, cold and angry, whispered, "She walks with the humans now, then she must be stopped." Night fell slowly over the human base. Dark clouds covered the moon, and the wind carried dust across the ground. The camp was quiet, too quiet. Most soldiers were asleep. Others were guarding the gates or monitoring screens in the medical tent. Nira lay on her cot, holding her crutch nearby. Her synthetic leg rested on the floor beside her, unplugged for maintenance. Jason sat at a desk nearby, typing on a small screen. He was writing a report, his final one. He had made a choice. If command ordered him to stop helping Nira, he would leave the army. But before he could send the message, an alarm suddenly rang through the base. Red lights blinked, and a deep voice called, "Security breach, North Gate." Jason stood up fast. "Stay here," he told Nira, grabbing his rifle, but Nira shook her head. "No," she said, "I can help." She quickly reattached her leg, ignoring the pain. Jason wanted to argue but didn't have time. They ran out of the tent together. Explosions lit the night sky. A squad of alien warriors had broken through the fence. They wore black armor and carried long rifles. They moved fast, too fast. Bullets flew from both sides. Humans and aliens shouted over each other. Smoke rose from the barracks, and the air smelled like fire and blood. Jason ducked behind a supply crate and fired back. Nira stayed low, her heart pounding. She recognized the armor. They were from her own planet. But this wasn't a rescue. This was a hit team. They weren't here to save her. They were here to silence her, she whispered. "They're here for me." Jason's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" he asked. She nodded, her hands shaking. "They think I'm a traitor for surviving," she said, "for trusting you." Jason gritted his teeth. He had feared something like this might happen. Nira had become a symbol, proof that humans and aliens could work together. To those who wanted war, that was dangerous. "We have to get you out of here," he said. "But where?" she asked. "Underground bunker," Jason replied. "Follow me." They ran through the smoke and chaos. Explosions rocked the ground. Other soldiers fought to hold the lines. Some shouted at Jason, "What are you doing with her?" He didn't answer. He just kept moving. As they reached the edge of the base, a tall alien stepped into their path. His eyes glowed red under his helmet. He pointed a plasma rifle at Nira. "You dishonor your blood," the alien said coldly. "You chose the enemy." Nira stepped forward, her voice firm. "I chose life," she said. "I chose hope." The alien raised his weapon. Jason didn't wait. He fired first. The blast hit the alien in the shoulder, sending him spinning to the ground. Jason grabbed Nira's hand. "Move," he shouted. They reached the bunker and locked the door. Behind them, inside, was quiet, cold steel walls and low emergency lights. Nira leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Jason checked her leg, minor damage. "But still working. They won't stop," Nira whispered. "Not until I'm dead." Jason looked her in the eyes. "Then we make them fail," he said. He opened a storage case and handed her a small energy pistol. "You may need to defend yourself." Nira hesitated. "I've never held a weapon before." Jason nodded. "Then let's hope you don't have to use it." Above them, the sounds of battle faded. Reinforcements had arrived. The alien squad was retreating. Some were captured, others escaped into the night. But the message was clear. Nira was now a target. Hours later, the all-clear signal echoed through the camp. Jason and Nira climbed out of the bunker. The base was damaged, burned, but still standing. Soldiers were injured, buildings destroyed, and the question on everyone's face was the same: why did they attack? When the officers debriefed Jason, he told them the truth. They came for her, he said. Because she lived, the officers looked at Nira with new eyes. Not just an alien girl, but a symbol of survival, of strength, of possible peace. But behind closed doors, the pressure grew. Command wasn't happy. The army didn't want political problems. They told Jason, she can't stay here. Jason walked back to the medical tent and sat beside Nira. They want to move you to a neutral station, Kay said quietly. I knew this would happen, she replied. Looking down, Jason reached into his pocket and handed her a small tracker. If you need me, press this, he said. I'll come, she nodded. I don't want to leave. I know, Jason said, but you have to live. No matter where that is. As dawn broke, Nira was taken away in a quiet armored vehicle. No ceremony, no goodbye, just silence and dust. But Jason knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. The transport ship flew quietly across the stars. Inside, Nira sat alone, staring through the small window. The stars outside didn't comfort her. They felt cold and distant. Her hands rested on her lap, one holding the tiny tracker Jason had given her. She hadn't pressed it, not yet. She didn't want to seem weak. But deep inside, she missed him. The ship landed on a remote, neutral planet called Haven 7. It wasn't part of the human empire or the alien coalition. It was a place for refugees, exiles, and broken dreams. The camp was built in a desert valley, surrounded by dry mountains and quiet winds. There were no soldiers here, only medics, volunteers, and survivors. As Nira stepped out of the ship, she felt eyes on her. Some looked curious, others cautious. No one said a word. Her synthetic leg clicked on the metal ramp with each step. She held her head high and kept walking. Inside the camp, a human nurse greeted her. Welcome to Haven, the nurse said gently. We'll help you recover. Nira nodded, her voice small. Thank you. They gave her a small room. Just a bed, a light, and a table. Quiet and safe, but still lonely. The next morning, she met the physical therapist, an older alien woman named Sira, who had lost both arms in the early days of the war. Sira wore advanced prosthetics and smiled kindly. Walking again is only the beginning. She told Nira, the real challenge is choosing to live every day. Nira trained. She practiced walking in the training yard. She walked across sand, over stone, upstairs, and around sharp corners. She fell often, scraped her knees, cried in silence. But she got up again and again. Sira watched closely, correcting her balance, adjusting her posture. You're improving, Sira said after 1 week. But Nira didn't smile. I still feel like I don't belong, she whispered. That night, Nira sat under the stars, thinking of Jason. She remembered his voice, his calm hands, the way he had believed in her when no one else did. She opened her hand and looked at the tracker again. Should she press it? Would he even come? Before she could decide, a small boy approached her. He was a child, half human, half alien, with large eyes and short arms. Are you the girl with the robot leg? He asked. Nira blinked, surprised. Yes, she said softly. He smiled and sat beside her. My mom says you're brave, he said. Nira looked at him. I'm just trying to walk again. That's brave, he replied. Some people don't even try. She stared at him, then slowly smiled for the first time in days. Thanks, she said. The boy stood up, waved, and ran off. Something shifted inside her heart. Maybe she could be more than a broken soldier. Maybe she could become a light for others, like Jason had been for her. The next morning, Nira asked for access to the camp's tech lab. Sira raised an eyebrow. Why? I want to upgrade my leg, Nira said. Make it better. The lab was small, but enough. With help from the tech team, Nira opened the leg casing. She cleaned the power cells, added stabilizers, and tuned the sensors. Her hands moved. With confidence, each wire she touched reminded her of how Jason had worked. Focused and calm, when she finished, she strapped the leg back on. And this time, she ran. Not fast, not perfect, but real running. The wind hit her face, her heart raced, her eyes filled with tears. She laughed for the first time in weeks. Sira stood at the edge of the yard, clapping slowly. You're stronger than most, she said. Don't let the war steal that from you. Over the next few days, Nira helped others in the camp. She taught children how to balance on weak legs. She helped a man fix his broken arm implant. She shared food, listened to stories, and began to feel like she mattered. One evening, as she sat outside, the tracker in her hand again, it beeped. A soft green light blinked. A message appeared on the tiny screen. Still out there. Still. Ready, Jason? Her chest tightened. He hadn't forgotten her. He was still watching, still protecting, even from far away. She didn't press the signal. Not yet. She didn't need rescue anymore. She was no longer broken. She was rebuilding step by step, but deep in space, dark plans were moving. The attack on the human camp had failed, but Nira was still alive, and for some, that was still unacceptable. In the shadows of war, someone whispered, if she walks again, she could lead if she speaks. Others will follow. Then we must silence her for good. Months passed on Haven 7. The war between humans and aliens still burned in distant systems. But inside the neutral camp, Nira had changed. She was no longer the broken girl who had lost her leg to a mine. Now she was a survivor, a teacher, and a quiet symbol of strength. Her synthetic leg was no longer just a tool. It was part of her story, a story that others in the camp had begun to share. Children drew pictures of her. Wounded soldiers came to her for guidance, and the volunteers started calling her the girl who walks through fire. One morning, a message arrived at the camp. 'Twas from a peace council, human and alien leaders finally agreeing to meet. The location was a space station floating between two borders, and Nira had been invited to speak. Sira looked at her with pride. They want your voice, she said, because they trust your truth. Nira nodded slowly. Her hands trembled. Just a little. I never thought I'd be more than a lost girl, she whispered. But now you are more. Sira replied, you are a bridge. The next day, Nira boarded a civilian shuttle. She wore a simple outfit, part alien, part human. Her synthetic leg had been polished, not to hide it, but to show it proudly. As the ship flew toward the peace station, Nira held a small tracker in her hand. She pressed the button just once, sending a silent signal. Jason received it within seconds. He was working at a field hospital on a distant moon. When he saw the message, he smiled. He didn't ask questions. He simply replied, on my way. The peace station was massive, with clear glass walls and long steel bridges. Security was tight. Guards from both sides stood shoulder to shoulder. Inside the main hall, hundreds of leaders, officers, and diplomats gathered. Some stared in confusion as Nira entered. Others whispered, recognizing her from reports and rumors. Jason arrived just in time. He walked up to her with a quiet smile. I thought you didn't need saving anymore, he joked. I don't. She replied, but I needed a friend. They walked together to the center stage. A microphone stood waiting, lights shining down like stars. Jason stood at the edge of the crowd while Nira stepped forward. She took a deep breath, then spoke. Her voice was soft at first, but strong. My name is Nira. She said, I was a child of war. She told her story, the explosion, the pain. The moment she was left behind, she told them about Jason the human who saved her life when others would have let her die. She told them about her synthetic leg, about the hatred she faced, and the kindness she found. She spoke of Haven 7, and the people who chose healing over fighting. I was supposed to die, she said, but instead, I learned how to walk again. I learned that pain doesn't care what species you are. And I learned that kindness can come from the most unexpected place. The room was quiet. Even the guards listened. Even the leaders leaned forward. I don't have power, Nira continued. I'm not a soldier, or a leader, or a ruler, but I'm alive because one human saw me as more than the enemy. And I believe we can all make that same choice. She stepped back, her chest rising and falling. Jason walked up and stood beside her. The crowd remained silent. For a moment. Then, slowly, someone clapped, then another, and another. Soon, the hall echoed with applause. Later that evening, as the diplomats met in private rooms, Nira and Jason sat on a bench near the glass wall. They looked out at the stars, quiet and endless. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. Jason nodded. "I think it already has," he said, "because they heard you." A news report flashed on the screen nearby. Peace talks begin with powerful testimony from alien survivor, human medic, and alien girl inspire. Hope across the galaxy, back on Haven 7. Children cheered when they saw the broadcast. Syrah smiled with quiet joy. Even across planets, the message had spread. But not everyone was happy. In the shadows of deep space, some still planned for war. Some feared the power of peace. They whispered, "She speaks for unity. She must be watched." But Nira wasn't afraid. She had walked through fire. She had faced death, hate, and betrayal, and still she stood. Not as a soldier, not as a weapon, but as a voice. A voice that said peace is possible, even in the middle of war.